This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so I wanted to focus this week. We're starting to read the book of Bamidbar, the parsha of Bamidbar. Bamidbar is out in the desert, right? Often translated as wilderness, but it's actually a desert, right? That's where we were after leaving Egypt. Before we entered the land of Israel, we were going through the desert, and actually Israel is also a bit of a desert until we were able to make it bloom. So I'd like to focus on two things today. First, and we'll see how much time we'll have to do the second one. But firstly, the Torah, right? And we always read the book, this parsha of Bamidbar, right before Shavuos. Of course, Shavuos is Sunday night, Monday, Monday night, Tuesday, and Shavuot is, of course, the anniversary of the revelation at Mount Sinai, Har Sinai, the giving of the Torah. So Midbar, desert, is an aspect of the Torah, of receiving the Torah. And also Bamidbar, right, which is known as Chumash HaPekudim. Pekudim means counting. So it is the book of counting. Good morning, Linda. Good morning, Ian. So as the book of counting also, it seems that these are important, almost prerequisites for Matan Torah, for the giving of the Torah. So I'd like to hear your ideas and discuss how this is, why this is, and if there is time, then we'll move on to the Book of Ruth, with the Megillat Ruth, which is read on Shavuot, and what is the connection between Megillat Ruth and the holiday of Shavuot and Matan Torah. So we'll have some time towards the end. We'll zip over to that. But now, we've discussed before that going back to Yetziat Mitzrayim, going back to the Exodus from Egypt, right? If God wanted to take us out, lickety split, he could have taken us out. The goal was clearly not simply to take us out of Egypt. If he wanted to take us out of Egypt, he could have employed the technology that was already employed by the 8th plague of Choshech, where, according to the Medrash, they were frozen in place for the first 3 days. So therefore, God wanted to take us out of Egypt. He could have simply said, all right, Egyptians, freeze, Choshech, and all the Jews, pack up your stuff and walk out unimpeded, not hindered in any way. He could have done that. He didn't need 10 plagues. He didn't need the whole sound and light show. Why did God go through all of those different steps? What would you say, my friends? Instead of just taking us out. Clearly, it wasn't just to take us out. What was God trying to accomplish, and what did he accomplish? Yeah, Cheryl.
Probably to show the world there's only one being
Good.
in control.
Yes, to show the world there's only one being in control. And that was and Egypt was the very center of power, of culture, of dominance. So if he could either get them on board, oh, that would have been great. And if not, which is what God kept doing, trying to get Paro on board. If he could get him on board, then this world would have taken a major step in the right direction of recognizing God and accepting God. And if not, so then to show God's domination, not over, a pack of a little tribe somewhere, but to show God's absolute control and domination over the most powerful nation of the world. So it needed to be done there in the midst of Egypt. That was the power place. That's why we understand God went through all of those steps. Yes, Cheryl.
Just going to relate that to what's going on right now today. There, the world is trying to erase God.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's a constant struggle. We have a constant struggle. Yeah. There is certainly a constant struggle with pushes in both directions. Yes. Yes, Marta.
Rabbi, do you not think it was a lesson to be learned? And this is why it was Hashem teaching the people that this was a lesson to be learned, that he was the power to be, and to see
Yes.
what the reaction of the people were.
Yes. Yes. You're going back to why it was done in Egypt and why it was done. Yes. All those. Good.
Yes.
Good. So perfect. So with exactly what Cheryl and Marta are saying, so where should Matan Torah take place? Where should this revelation of Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am Hashem your God, right? Not to have any other molten image, not to have any molten images, on and on. Where should that have taken place? In the midst of, in a place where all would see. And instead, where is the Torah given? Out in the Midbar, in this quiet, away from all the fanfare, away from, there was no news reporters there. It wasn't being live streamed as it would have, in the way that they would do back in those days, right? So why in the Midbar? Why in the Midbar? So on a practical level, I would say, you could say, if you look back on page 484, everybody, page, I'm sorry, 348. Make sure I got this right. Yeah, 348. Perek Yud Bet, Shmot Yud Bet Aleph. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe vel Aaron be'eretz Mitzrayim le'mor. Hashem said to Moshe and to Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, and this is now the first mitzvah that's given to the children of Israel as the children of Israel. HaChodesh hazeh lachem Rosh Chodashim. This is the proclamation of Rosh Chodesh. Rashi says, Be'eretz Mitzrayim, in the land of Egypt. Where was he? Chutz Likrach. Rashi says, outside of the metropolis, outside of the city. Rashi then tells us how he reached that conclusion. Oh, Eina Ela B'tocha Krach. Perhaps no. Perhaps it in fact was in the midst of the city. Talmud Lomar. Well, previously we learned Moshe said to Paro, Kitseti et ha'ir, when I will leave this city, I will call up to God, and the plague will stop. Moshe emphasized when I leave the city. So we see from there, Rashi says, Ma tefila kala, if a simple tefillah, prayer, lo hitpalel b'toch hakrach, could not be prayed within the city, Dibur Chamur, this very, very serious first mitzvah, lo kol shekain, certainly not. Umipnei ma lo nidbari mo b'toch hakrach. Why did he not speak to them within the city? Lefi shahaita mile'ah gilulim. Because it was filled with gilulim, with idolatry. Galal actually means dung. So we we tongue-in-cheek refer to idolatry as avodat gilulim, worshiping dung. Because any worship that's not to God is tantamount to worshiping dung. Okay, so we see that in a practical sense, to have Matan Torah in a place of idolatry, it cannot be given there. Why not? How do we understand that? Why can't we have that? Why would it not be in a place? Is it a place of idolatry? Is it a place of idolaters? Is it both? What would you say? Kathy, you're about to say something, no?
Well, I was thinking how Hashem would say that he won't share his glory with another. And in a country that was everything about their gods, and I don't know, just a thought.
Okay. Yeah, so interesting. You know, like Egypt had their chance to accept God. And once they were not going to acquiesce, to humble themselves, so then at that point, right, this was not for them. This was not meant to be for them. I hear that. There's an interesting medrash. The medrash says the Torah was given with Eish, with Mayim, and with Midbar. With fire, with water, and in the Midbar. And it says two reasons. Fire, water, and Midbar are all chinam, free. And also they are, and the Medrash says, a person, in order to receive Torah, you have to make yourself hefker. Hefker means ownerless. So what is this Medrash showing us? What does it mean that these things are chinam? Why is it that the Torah needs to be given through a medium that is chinam, that is free? What does that teach us about the Torah, my friends?
Maybe that the Torah is free
Meaning what?
for all who wish to partake of it.
Okay. Yeah, there's no it's not meant to be exclusive in any way. The Torah was given through these mediums that are free, that are available for all, right? In other cultures, right, it's only the leaders who have access to these teachings, to the understandings. Whereas for us, the most basic mitzvah, the mitzvah that we say that is keneged kulam, equal to all, is Talmud Torah, is studying the Torah, right? Which is really fascinating, right? Going back to what we discussed by a couple of weeks ago, I think, by Bahar, maybe it was last week, we discussed different fingerprints that we find in the Torah for its divine origin, right? Things that no person would write in the Torah if they were looking to pass off this document as it's God's document, but we're passing it off as such, which any writer basically is doing that. And God spoke to Moses saying, if God did not speak to Moses saying, then you're trying to pass this off as something that actually took place. Now, you know, when, not that I ever did this, but if you have a fake ID and you're trying to get into some place, what do you do with that fake ID? a quick flash, right? You don't say, here's my ID. Why don't you take your ultra blue, your blue violet light and shine it on it and scrutinize it, right? You want it? Here it is. Thanks. Good night. I'm in, right? So the last mitzvah that a false Torah would have would be study it, delve into it, pick it apart, examine, challenge every nuance of it. But that's the idea of the Torah. The Torah is chinam. It's there for all. I think Rabbi Beryl Wine would call it a meritocracy. Who's going to be great in Torah? Someone who's great in Torah. Someone who works and studies and gains that level of knowledge, that clarity. It's a meritocracy. It is chinam. It is there free for all. Now, what do we mean that we say it needed to be a place that was hefker? It needed to be a place that was hefker, ownerless. So some say, well, look, had the Torah been given in the land of Israel, well, in which tribe's area was it going to be given? Right? Each one would have then claimed some supremacy, some ownership. Right? Well, this really is mine. We'll share it with you, but actually this is something given to us. So no tribe will be able to claim ownership. But what else is there about a midbar? The Torah is being given in a midbar. What feelings does one have when they are in a midbar? Marta.
Desolate, very, very quiet, desolate. There's nothing there.
Okay, good. So one thing that a person has, one is overwhelmed. I remember back in the 1980, before Camp David, I was in Israel post high school, and Israel still had the Sinai Peninsula before the peace agreement with Egypt, and we had a 5-day trip to the Sinai desert, camping out at night. It was amazing. But what was so overwhelming was the quiet stillness. You know, and we live in a world, especially now, it's just getting worse and worse. We live in a world where there is no quiet time unless you carve out. I love Shabbos is beautiful. There's no computer, there's no cell phone, there's no WhatsApp messages, there's nothing. It's just a time for a little bit of headspace that's not getting pinged from every direction at every moment. Now, I turn off the notices on all of my apps. I turn off the notices. Otherwise, this thing is going to bzz, bzz, bzz. And they make it like that because psychologically they know that if I hear that buzz, I've got to know what's happened. Who is it that just sent me something? You know, and we have no time to just be with ourselves, be with our thoughts, be with our Creator, be with our God. And as Marta said, a midbar is just this serene, quiet opportunity of solitude, opportunity to think The Torah needs to be given in a Midbar, needed to be given in a Midbar, and we also need to carve out those Midbar spaces for ourselves in order to live properly. You know, I mentioned over Shabbos that I had a conversation with this past Shabbos' bar mitzvah boy. And I said to him, so what does it mean to become a bar mitzvah? He goes, I'm becoming a man. What does that mean? What does that mean? Can you vote? Can you smoke? You know, like, what does that mean? Are you paying your own bills? Like, what does that mean? But our understanding is that as a bar or bat mitzvah, the person now has the opportunity to build their own personal relationship, more mature adult relationship with God. That's what it is. And in order to build this relationship, we need to take out some time. We need to hit the pause button on all the things that are constantly bombarding us. And we need to make that connection. Good. So Marta's point, I think, is beautiful about that solitude. Yes, Ladero.
If I can say one thing too, when I think about a desert, in a desert, you're always thirsty as well, you know, and so maybe that could have meant, you know, the children of Israel needed to be in a place where they were always thirsty, you know, physically and spiritually as well.
Nice. Right? In order to receive Torah, we need to have a thirst for it. Meaning we need to recognize that we need this. And therefore to have that thirst for it. Beautiful idea. Beautiful idea, Ladero. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Ora.
So I think by comparison to giving the Torah in a adulterous environment, the desert is a space of nothingness, let's say, of no movement or little movement. And I think for me, it is a space for choice. If you are in an environment that has a lot going on, you may want to run away from that environment and choose something else because of escaping. But here it's like pure choice. You can agree to join this event or not, but you're not running away from something.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I
Nice.
take it.
Nice. And in desert, you really have to confront it and make a clear decision. Right? It can't be, oh, I didn't notice. Oh, I didn't know. Oh, right. Nice.
It's like a do-over or a fresh start. You know, they'd come through the sea that had opened up, so they're being kind of born again. And without all the distractions of Egypt, without all the fanfare, they're starting from nothing, really. So it's a do-over.
Nice. So desert, you've got nothing in the desert. So now you're starting. It's like being born now. You're starting again now. Nice. You know,
the Jews were also in a position of transition. So this came in the middle of leaving Egypt and before entering Israel. So it was probably given as a guide for the future. So it's besides being in a desolate area, it was given in a position of transition.
Interesting. That's a nice idea, Ian. Right? That right now, as we're going from one stage to another, this needs to be done there. Nice. Another
And
thought that yeah, please.
also, given that we see the miracle of the liberation, And with this fresh start that Kathy's talking about, already in this vast, awe-striking environment, we're already predisposed to see that everything is from Hashem and to be ready to have miraculous revelation.
Nice, beautiful, beautiful, Janet. I was thinking along those lines also, that, you know, when you're in the desert, it's overwhelming. You know, we went with the family years ago. We went to the Grand Canyon area, and we were staying. We had this Airbnb that was this one little house in the middle of all these acres, and there was no light pollution, as they call it. And we were outside and looking up at the sky, and it was incredible how it was just awash with stars. It was absolutely incredible. And you feel just so humbled. You feel just so small, yet part of something that is just so incredible. And I think in the Midbar, that's where we have the chance to recognize this God world that we are a part of, this incredible, incredible universe, world that we are placed in. And that is the perfect venue to have this introduction of Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Hi, allow me to introduce myself. I am Hashem, your God, who took you out from the land of Egypt. Right? Not in, you'll pardon me for those who like this place, not in Las Vegas with its glaring, blaring lights and sounds, but the world in its absolute pure beauty, power, overwhelmingly incredible. And that's where we needed to have this standing there. Good. Right? Also, in a midbar, you have your basics. you have what you need. And I think another aspect of receiving the Torah is you'll have what you need. You know, we can put all of our efforts and all of our focus on getting more and more and more and more and more. You know, the famous bumper sticker, whoever has the most toys when they die wins, right? You know, but it's so empty, it's so futile, right? So the Midbar is a place where you have what you need. And you realize, I don't need all that much. I'm okay. Life can be simple, and I could focus my attention on things that are more important. And a life of Torah often means being willing to give up on certain things. You know, that great TV show that's on Friday night, right? That cheeseburger that always looks so good. You know, there are things that a person needs to say, you know, I don't need that. I don't need everything. I'm not satisfied with my lot. I am sameach. I'm actually very, very happy with what I have. It's a chelek. It's a part. It's a portion. It's not everything, right? To quote Rav Michael Jagger, I'm kidding. You can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you find you get what you need, right? There's a lot of truth in that. There's a lot of truth in that. And a Midbar is a place where we recognize we don't need all that stuff. That stuff actually makes us heavier. And we can do without. We can do without all of that stuff. Yes, Ladero.
I was looking at the root word, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. What is the root word for Midbar, Dabar? Well, I was looking at some of the definitions, and I thought it was interesting. It says one of the definitions is to combine separate items into one. And so, thinking about, coming to Har Sinai, taking all the separate items or all the separate individuals of Israel and combining them, getting them to one place so that they can receive Torah.
Nice. And I like that. And it's only with all of this, with this solitude, this quiet, that we could all come together on that. Nice. Midbar also comes from the root word daber, which means to speak. Right? And sometimes, words are spoken or a message is heard clearest without any words that are actually being spoken. Right? We say we speak about the heavenly movements, Bali Nishma Kolam. Right? We say that in Tehillim, we say that on Shabbos morning as part of our paragraphs leading up to the davening. Bali Nishma Kolam, which can mean Bali Nishma Kolam, Bali Nishma, not heard is their voice is not heard. Or the way I like to understand it is Bali Nishma, without being heard, Kolam, their voice, right? Without being heard, the voice makes itself very, very clear, right? The heavens don't need to speak. Bali Nishma, without saying anything, Kolam, their voice, their message is very, very clearly being broadcast. So a midbar is a place of speaking, where without necessarily having to say anything, the message is given in a very, very clear way. And combining a little bit of what Ian, you had said, and Ladero had said, Rabbi Sachs Zatzal wrote how the Jewish people, we are unique, that all other nations, there's first land, and then there is law, right? There's land, they become a nation, and then they create their system of governance, of law. Whereas we very uniquely, we had law before land. So our essence is not the land. Our essence is the law. Our essence is our connection to God. That can be most fully realized when we are in the land of Israel. But most importantly, we are a nation of the book more than a nation of the word more than a nation of the land. And that's how we were able to survive for thousands of years before we returned to the land of Israel, right? So that is another aspect of this midbar. And yet, with all of this, Bamidbar is the book of counting, right? And that clearly is foundational for Matan Torah. Why is that? Why is counting foundational for Matan Torah? Look, for 49 days, we're counting every day to get to Shavuot. It's all about counting. Why is counting the days? Why is counting the people? Why is that so foundational over here for Matan Torah, my friends?
It shows that Hashem thinks very, very highly of the Jews.
Yeah. Every person, we spoke about it being chinam. It's not exclusive in any way. It's for everyone, and every person plays that role. We say in a Kabbalistic sense that every single soul has its letter in the Sefer Torah, right? We are all a part of the Torah. The blessing that we make, we say is v'tein chalkeinu b'Torah. Give us our chelek, our portion in the Torah, meaning each and every one of us has our unique understanding, our unique part of Torah, right? Because every person is unique, as we've discussed many times, with all of our different experiences, and therefore we hear everything differently and we understand things differently, and we offer our own unique aspect, our own unique slice of Torah and what it means. So if we're counting, it means each and every individual is of importance, is noteworthy, right? Has their role to play. We're counting the days as we get to Shavuot, because every day, every moment counts. And that's why we won't daven Ma'ariv to bring in Shavuot Sunday night. We won't daven Ma'ariv until I think it's 8:28, which is when the stars come out. That's when we can first daven Ma'ariv, because we have each of these days to mimot, complete days leading up to Shavuot, and each one, every moment of importance towards reaching this point. So therefore, yes, right, we can't cut those countings leading up. We can't cut them short. So we can't we count the days, we count the moments, we count the people, because we count, because we make a difference. And everyone has their unique significance, their unique contributions that they make. And we need every single one. You know, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who started this whole shlichus, right, making Chabad centers everywhere, right? And he said, with the same zeal that the murderous Nazis tried to find every Jew to kill, to murder, we have to have that same zeal to try to find every Jew, to bring them in, to give them life, to bring them to ignite their Judaism, who they are. And that's how we have this. On one hand, we have this Midbar, where I'm out in the middle of nowhere. I'm a nothing. I'm a nobody. I have this tremendous sense of humility, right? All what was lacking most in Egypt throughout all the plagues that God was trying to give them was a sense of humility, to submit to God. And the Midbar gives us this overwhelming humility as we stand there, small, insignificant me as part of the universe, and that needs to be counterbalanced with counting. Chumash HaPekudim. I might be small, but I make a difference. But I'm important. You know, when you have this tile wall, right? There's something called the broken tile syndrome, right? And that is, if you have this massive wall with all these beautiful tiles, where will your eye be directed? The one that's missing, the one that's broken. And we're meant to be this part of this incredible tapestry. And if we're missing, if we're broken, then that is, in fact, very, very significant. So that is the Torah reading and the messages that we bring into our Shavuot, that we bring into our Matan Torah. And as I said before, on Shavuot, we read the book of Ruth. The book of Ruth. And in our Chumashim, it is on page 1269. And it is a pretty short, it is a pretty short book. It is a pretty short book. And it tells the story. We'll go through it just briefly over here, right? There was a powerful man by the name of Elimelech. His wife was Naomi. He had 2 sons. And there was a famine in Israel. And they left. They vacated. They wanted to try to keep their wealth. And when they were there, they married Moabite women, Orpah and Ruth. And they lived there for about 10 years. And then tragedy struck, and Machlon and Kilion died, right? Elimelech died. Everyone died, leaving Naomi and these 2 daughters-in-law. Naomi tells them, go back to your house. And Orpah does go back. She ended up being the great-great-grandmother of Goliath.
David Amelech.
Yeah, of Goliath. Yeah. Right? Ruth says famously, and we learn out many of the parameters. Hello, London. How are you? So good to see you. So we learn out many of the parameters of conversion. We learn from her. If you look on page 1269, right? Go back. I'm too old, right? And what does Ruth say? Verse 16 there, right? Do not urge me to leave you, to turn back, not follow you. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you sleep, I will sleep. Your people are my people. Your God is my God. Where you die, I will die. Thus may Hashem do to me and more, if anything but death separates me from you. Okay, so they went. She came. They came to Bethlehem, and everyone was shocked. Is this the great Naomi, the powerful, wealthy Naomi, who left with such grandeur and now is coming back literally penniless, bereft of the family, right? And there was a relative by the name of Boaz, and they were impoverished. And Ruth Ruth goes and starts to gather out there in the field of Boaz. And Boaz does chesed to her and allows her to be there and takes good care of her. Now, then we have in chapter 3, right, we have it's seemingly scandalous that Ruth, that Naomi sends Ruth into the threshing area where Boaz, this relative, was, right? And nothing untoward happens, right? But she lets him know that, right, you've started to do the chesed, you should complete the chesed, and you should do what's called the yibum. Yibum is the marriage, to give life, to give continuity to her late husband, to the family. And he should be the redeemer. And in the end, he is the redeemer. There was another close relative who did not want to marry her. The reason being, interestingly enough, because there was confusion. The Torah says that the nation of Moab cannot enter into the kahal. Cannot, even if they convert, they can't marry regularly. And there were 2 opinions there. Is that only the men, or is it the men and the woman? And this other relative was concerned that it's the men and the woman, so he can't marry Ruth. But the Torah Shebaal Peh, clear teaching is that the men are not, even if they convert, they're not allowed to be part of the kahal. The women are. And therefore Boaz ended up marrying her, and it ends off, and these are the generations of Peretz. Peretz was the son of Judah, who gave birth to Chetzron, who gave birth to Ram, who gave birth to Aminadav, who gave birth to Nachshon. Nachshon, we know, the one who led the charge into the sea to split the sea. Nachshon gave birth to Salma. Salma gave birth to Boaz, the player here. Boaz gave birth to Oved. Oved gave birth to Yishai. Yishai gave birth to David. That, in a quick synopsis, is the book of Ruth. Why are we reading it now on Shavuot? Okay, we won't read it then if there's no reason to.
Tithing is part.
Okay. It's Torah and it's Chesed. We hear about the Chesed, the tithing, the Chesed that was done by Boaz. Fair enough.
Because the harvest that Boaz was doing and leaving the gleanings of was the wheat harvest, and that was the first harvest that would be the next after the Omer, after the barley Omer.
So Shavuot is harvest time, and this took place during the harvest time. Okay. What else we got, my friends? Well, I would say we are receiving the Torah. We were all sort of like converts at the time, accepting it upon ourselves. So therefore we hear about Ruth, right? Who was a person who accepted the Torah upon herself. It's interesting, right? How many mitzvot are there? How many Noahide mitzvot are there? How many mitzvot do we have that apply to all of humanity?
7.
The Sheva mitzvot, 7. Sheva mitzvot b'nei Noach. So how many new mitzvot did we get at Matan Torah?
600 and
606. Right? 613 minus 7 is 606. Isn't it interesting? Root, Resh, Vav, Taf. Resh has the gematria of 200. Vav is 6. Taf is 400. Root is the gematria of 606. What a coincidence, huh? What a coincidence, right? Root is all about accepting upon ourselves, right? So Ruth accepted these 606 additional mitzvot, right? And that is our also accepting that, right? Now we discussed by Midbar, we discussed the idea of the poverty, right? That in the Midbar, you have your basic needs, and that's good. And we see Ruth also accepting this to follow her mother-in-law, even though it ended up being a life of poverty for a while, right? And we also see this idea of it being chinam, of it not being, there's no exclusivity over here. It's for everyone. Here you have this Moabite convert who joined, and she is the great grandmother of King David, which means she is the great grandmother of Mashiach, of the Messiah. Right? You know, when the Torah tells of the Ten Commandments, it's in the parsha of Yitro, who was a convert. And on Shavuot, we read about the convert Ruth. Out from her comes the whole Davidic dynasty, and out from her comes Mashiach. Right? So that really is that simpleness and the counting. Right? No one should say, who am I? What can I accomplish? What can I really contribute? What difference do I make? Look at this impoverished, widowed Moabite girl who became the great-grandmother of King David, of the Mashiach. And there are those that say that the yard site of David HaMelech, of King David, the date of his passing, is on Shavuot. Now, we have a teaching by Moshe, right? Moshe said, Me'ev esrim shana ani hayom, I am today. The tzaddikim, they are born and they die on the same date, right? Which represents a certain shleimut, a certain completion, fullness of the task for which they were sent. So if David HaMelech, King David, died on Shavuot, he was born on Shavuot. So therefore, this is the holiday of David HaMelech, and therefore we will read this Megillah, this scroll, this story that tells all about the birth and what led to this receiving of the Torah. Yes, Ora.
Can you say again? I thought I heard you say that Ruth was the great grandma of Goliath.
The other wife. There were two Moabite women. Ruth came back, and Orpah, the other one. Orpah actually means they're back. She turned her back, and she went back home, and she became the great grandmother of Goliath. So it ended up that they met again. They met again, David and Goliath. Yes, Ladero.
Oh, this is so good. Thank you for that. It's giving me chills. Very powerful. So I guess obviously Hashem could have chosen anybody for the Mashiach to come through. Why do you think? Hold on. Why do you think Hashem decided to allow the Mashiach to come through a convert?
I think it really shows this. Well, there are a couple of factors. I think it really shows this concept of a meritocracy. I've mentioned before the famous story in the Gemara about Hillel, the great sage Hillel, that he was very poor and he couldn't pay to go into the shiur. See, he was on the top of the roof listening in, and ended up, snow came and he almost died up there. Whose shiur, whose class was he listening to? The class given by Shemaiah and Avtalion, who were both converts. So I think it's to let us know, on one hand, it's to let us know that everyone can reach the top, but also I think it's more than that. The Mashiach is the one who's going to need to bring the whole world back together. Therefore, the Mashiach will need to have some skeletons in his closet. And the first class, we'll be learning all night, Sunday night. And the first class that I'm going to be giving is going to be, I'll be sending out a schedule today, is going to be the scandalous backstory that led to Ruth and Boaz and Mashiach. And, we call it, in today's jargon, we call it the skeletons in the closet, right? And we want politicians who don't have skeletons in the closet in our world today. And none of them are like that. But in fact, when it comes to Mashiach, we want him to have skeletons in the closet, because he's going to need to bring together everyone with all of their blemishes, with all of their missteps, right? And therefore, this Mashiach is going to need to be somewhat universal, right? And what Jew will be more universal than a Jew who has converted, who has a lot of scandal in their background, in their backstory. So yeah, so that's who Mashiach will need to be. And also Ruth was not a youngster, and it also tells us, that no matter how small you are, no matter how late, right? Some say that she was 40 years old, and thereby would have served as the inspiration to Rabbi Akiva, the great sage Rabbi Akiva, who also started at age 40. Yes, Or.
I had a thought about the blemishes that we all have, and the parts. I think this is necessary for us to grow, that we have.
Yeah.
It's built into our story of life. Without it, we cannot move forward, right?
I agree. Yeah, I agree. Or that's very beautiful and true. I think the most powerful illustration of that is the teaching that the broken shards of the first luchot are also placed into the holy ark. So we each have our luchot shleimot, our full tablets, and our luchot shavuot, and our broken pieces. And that's who we are, and that's what we need to fully realize who we are and what we're meant to be. Yeah. Yes,
Rabbi?
Cheryl.
Another thought I think about that often, because it's like when Mashiach does come, how will we grow and what are we working on? It's so baffling,
Yeah. Yes, Janet.
So along the lines of kivud ve'em, so Naomi says go, and then they say no, and then she reiterates, so no, my daughters, how will you find, but Naomi said, turn back, my daughters, why should you come with me? Have I more sons? How will you find husbands? So couldn't Orpah be considered to be doing kivud ve'em? I mean, it's not just once admonished, it was told firmly twice and making a case. So is it so bad? Maybe she thought she was doing her mother-in-law's will.
I don't think we blame Orpah necessarily for leaving, right? The fact that Goliath came from her, I think the Medrash says that she availed herself to quite a few other men on the way back home, right? And that's what led to what it led to, right? But actually, we learn out that we at first discourage converts when they first come. We learn that out from what Ruth was, what Naomi was saying to Ruth. Nowadays, we don't so much discourage. We just let people know, listen, it's going to be a 1.5 year process. And we see how many are still there, 1.5 years to 2 years at the end. And that's the discouragement. And discourage is not meant to discourage. Discourage is meant to make sure that the person is going to really be happy with this decision for the long haul. That's really the concern.
But weren't the Orpah and Ruth required to convert before they married the sons? Weren't they already converts?
That's an interesting question. That there are different opinions about that. How do they properly converted yet or not? Yeah. Right. It seems from this story, from the simple story, not that they had not yet. And it was only after that she had converted, that they fully converted. But there are different opinions on that. Yeah. Okay, my friends. Good seeing everybody. So we have a nice Bamidbar and Ruth getting us ready for Shavuot. We will have lunch and learn on Thursday, the continuation, part 2 of the Chosen Nation. Is it racist? Is it non-equal? That will be on Thursday. Don't worry, Cheryl. The answer is that it's not. Okay. Yeah, we'll stream Kabbalat Shabbat on Friday and Havdalah Saturday night. And of course, we won't have class on next Tuesday. It's Yom Tov. So we will resume this class on 2 Tuesdays. Those who would like to join us, we will be having all night learning. We'll be having classes on, like I said, the scandalous backstory of leading up to Ruth and Mashiach, right? We'll probably be starting in person, of course, not streaming. It'll be Yom Tov. Probably be starting about 11:30 p.m. on Sunday night, or about 11:15 probably we'll get started, 11:15. And you don't have to stay the whole night, but we're going to go straight through till 5 a.m. And then we'll be davening at about 5:15 with sunrise. So we'll be having a class on that. I might redo the Chosen Nation. I think most of the guys who are staying up have not been at the Thursday, right? We'll go through other aspects of the Seret Dibrot, right? There's a beautiful piece we've done before. It's always nice to go over on Shavuot night about the hidden structure of the 10 Commandments. We have a lot of nice stuff to go through, and the night ends up being kind of short. Before you know it, it's like, oh, time to and some cheesecake helps also to keep it keep the person awake a little bit. So
So
yeah.
how are we going to do this as far as distancing? Are we going to have spaced chairs? Are we going to have?
Yeah. In the shul, all the chairs are spaced, and any food we have will be individually wrapped, that people will be able to take their own and eat it in a way that they feel safe and comfortable without compromising.
And while we're learning, we'll keep our masks on, or
yeah. Inside the shul, we keep our masks on. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Ora.
Rabbi, forgive my ignorance, but why do we study all night?
So according to the Medrash, we all went to sleep the night before Kabbalah Torah and needed to be woken up. So as our tikkun, as our way of rectifying that, we show that we're eager. So we don't sleep the whole night. Yeah. Very good. Okay, everybody. Good seeing you. A good day, everybody.
Thank
I
you.
said, Thursday we're on. Next week, Tuesday, of course, Yom Tov, we won't be on. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Be well, everybody.
Mm.